Namaskar and welcome back to this special discussion on Akashvani and the Director General of Military Operations, the Director General of Air Operations and the Director General of Naval Operations a short while ago held a special briefing and they told the nation about the success of Operation SINDOOR and how the three forces in synergy and with an upper hand destroyed any hostile activity that was launched from the other side. And again, the Indian Defence Forces reiterated that India's intention was only to target terrorists and their terrorist infrastructure and not Pakistani civil or military installations. And we have with us Shri Atul Aneja, Strategic Analyst. Thank you for joining us, sir. And we would like to know your take on the briefing by the Director Generals of Military Operation, Air Operations and Naval Operations.
I think it was an excellent briefing which actually shows how the Indian Armed Forces have transitioned to the digital age, to the modern age. Not only did they demonstrate that India had the upper hand, in fact, dominance in this particular engagement which took place with Pakistan, as which you rightly said was really counter-terror from our side and was not intended to hit civilian or military targets. But for me, I think the most important takeaway was the jointmanship, that how the three forces worked in such coordination and synergy. This is a very, very welcome development. In fact, a change, because we heard earlier tough wars going on in the armed forces. This is history now. This is a new India and a new way of functioning as a team. And that came out very clearly in the way the entire air defense network was integrated with assets from each of these services getting fused and coordinated under the Air Force Command, Air Defense Command. So even the naval units are part of the system. Even BSF was part of it. So this is the jointmanship, integrated warfare. This is what we have transitioned into. It was started earlier with the formation of the theater command system and the appointment of the Chief of Defense Staff. It has proven its worth in this engagement which we have had with Pakistan in the last few days.
Atul, if I may ask a question, the fact that what you mentioned about jointness, and if you remember, around the same time when jointness were being talked about at the turn of century, there was another thing which some analysts have started talking about again, the cold start doctrine. So do you see a validation of these issues? As you said, the jointness is now there it was demonstrated here.
Yeah. You see, Prasad, what happened was that this whole concept of jointmanship, some of the Western countries, especially the United States, had this system. And it was at one point being said that for a developing country like India, this may not be, this may not prove to be useful. But I think that's all been proved wrong. You are working together in synergy. You have a CDS on top, and then the political leadership giving you direction. The capacity to calibrate application of force, I think that also has come through in this particular engagement which we have had with Pakistan. That you can up the ante depending on the situation. And this is done seamlessly and in a way that all the elements are involved in it among the services. So I think this is something which is great. This is the right direction, and hopefully, and I'm sure that this is going to be the way forward. We are going to get more fine-tuned as we experience what we did in this particular engagement. More assets are going to come into the picture. I just was watching the news. The Russians are saying that now they want to develop the S-500 system jointly with India. So, this is going to be, again, the S-400 system was something which was for the entire armed forces, were involved in its deployment. So these are the new things, new assets are going to come in, we are going to become stronger. But what is the validation of the concept is important. And this particular conflict which we've had with Pakistan is that gives you that validation and confidence that this is the right way forward. And I think it's given a new direction. That will be, to me, the biggest takeaway. The form of war fighting has changed permanently in India. And this is going to be the way forward.
Thank you, Mr. Aneja, for joining us. And we now have this bite by the Director General Military Operations, Lieutenant General Rajiv Ghai, on the terror activity in the press briefing which they held a short while ago.
हमें एयर डिफेंस ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के एयर डिफेंस की कार्रवाई को एक कॉन्टेक्स्ट में समझने की आवश्यकता है। मैंने आपको कल बताया था कि पिछले कुछ सालों में आतंक की गतिविधियों का कैरेक्टर जो है उसमें कुछ बदलाव आ रहा था। अब हमारी मिलिट्री के साथ साथ मासूम सिविलियंस उन पर भी हमले हो रहे थे। 2024 में जम्मू सेक्टर में शिवखोरी मंदिर को जाते हुए यात्री और इस साल अप्रैल में पहलगाम में मासूम पर्यटक इस खतरनाक ट्रेंड के विशेष उदाहरण हैं। पहलगाम तक पाप का ये घड़ा भर चुका था।
Well, that was a very important message by the Director General Military Operations, Lieutenant General Ghai, that the entire system of how the terrorists were acting with impunity, and Pahalgam was the last straw. So how would you analyze this, Aneja ji?
Well, I think this is just a demonstration of the political will. When we say that there is zero tolerance to terrorism, we mean business about it. And we have demonstrated in the case in the way, in fact, we had done so earlier when, after the Pulwama attack, we went in for the Balakot strikes. But I think the bigger message had to be conveyed to Pakistan. And because Pakistan had even started targeting innocent civilians, I think that was the last straw, as they say, proverbial camel's back. And we have shown it this time that, we will hit you and we'll hit you so hard. I mean, I cannot imagine any time earlier that we would have hit their air bases like Chaklala or the Noor Khan Air Base, which is next to the Rawalpindi military headquarters. I mean, there couldn't be a better demonstration of will that we mean business. Striking at places like Sargodha from here, Sialkot, Lahore. I mean,
11 air bases in total, as was mentioned in yesterday's briefing.
Absolutely. When you hit them so hard, and the best thing is that your focus was never diluted.
Yes.
That the whole effort was to deter terror. That don't dare to strike it again. And I think that is what Lieutenant General Ghai was mentioning, that they had started targeting civilians. He mentioned these two instances, the second one being Pahalgam. I think that was it. It's a turning point in the way India reacts. And if you recall, when we have gone in for a strategic pause, or you can say a ceasefire, I think the line that any other action of this kind will be seen as a declaration of war. That means the seriousness of it, that enough is enough, no more terrorism. Just stop terrorism. If you do it, then expect to be hit this hard and expect to face war.
Right.
अतुल जी, आज जो प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस शुरू हुई और कल की जो प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस शुरू हुई थी, दोनों में एक सिमिलरिटी भी है और थोड़ा सा, मैं तो समझता हूँ, अगर कहूँ दूसरे शब्दों में, थोड़ा सा विस्तार है और संकेतों की बात है। कल शिव तांडव से शुरू हुई प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस। आज रामधारी सिंह दिनकर की कविता याचना नहीं अब रण होगा। पाकिस्तान को क्या ये संदेश देने की कोशिश है कि भाई अब तो सुधर जाओ?
बिल्कुल उमेश जी, ये बिल्कुल मैसेजिंग है और एक तरह से इसमें कल्चरल मैसेजिंग भी है कि हम अपनी जो हमारी सिविलाइजेशनल ईथोस है उससे जुड़े हुए हैं। हमारी सोच हमारी है और भारत एक शक्ति के रूप में उभर चुका है और वो हमारी अपनी है, हमारी सभ्यता से जुड़ी हुई है ये शक्ति। तो मुझे लगता है सटल मैसेजिंग ये भी जा रही है कि हमारी सिर्फ वॉर फाइटिंग की एबिलिटी नहीं है, लेकिन हम हर तरह से सक्षम हैं, हम कल्चरली भी रूटेड हैं और हमें कोई हिला नहीं सकता हमारे लक्ष्य से। तो मुझे लगता है ये एक मैसेजिंग बहुत ही सटल तरीके से दी जा रही है। सिर्फ हमारी पॉलिटिकल विल की बात या मिलिट्री विल की बात ही नहीं है, हमारी कल्चरल विल की बात भी आ रही है सामने। और जहां तक मैंने वॉर्स कवर किए हैं, ऐसा मैंने नहीं सुना था कि इस तरह से शुरुआत हो। ये भी एक एक
नया ट्रेंड कह सकते हैं और नई दिशा कह सकते हैं। जी
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
Atul, if I were to ask you, I think I did ask earlier about it. The point is, some commentators analyzing the initial reaction, the way India went at the kinetic action, they likened it to something again, the cold start doctrine which was there at the turn of century. So, do you think that doctrine itself, which nobody had, I mean, is there a change that has been incorporated, or do you see any remnants or shades of that in this particular area?
You see, Prasad, let's look at earlier wars, right? When we used to have a normal India-Pakistan engagement, let's say 65, your war was, it took a time cycle before you actually mobilized your strike corps and got them onto the front line, your heavy equipment like tanks and others. And there was enough time for the enemy to predict when you'll be ready for the war. But I think all that changed, if I recall, with Op Parakram. When General Padmanabhan was the chief of army staff, I recall that, Pakistan had already tested its nukes. And that was a time when it didn't have the luxury of coming forward for a long 14-day war, because we thought that, the window could be just 4 days or so. And that is when General Padmanabhan requested our then Prime Minister Atul Bihari Vajpayee that I need to mobilize my strike corps at the first. We can't wait for it. And be prepared for it, because if I have a window, it would be just 3 to 4 days before a nuclear response may come from Pakistan. So the entire situation, military thinking had started evolving from that time onwards. I think that's something which has gone forward, Prasad, that you're looking for sharp surprise, and you don't have much preparation time for you to get into the battlefield. So I think that entire outlook has changed now. And you mentioned the cold start. I mean, these were doctrines of the past. Now you have to have readiness, and more than that, readiness in all domains. The new elements are the digital ones, which are your network security and the use of drones, as we have seen this one. This is another example. In this particular conflict, we saw heavy use of unmanned aerial vehicles. This is the way it evolves. And doctrines have to sort of dovetail with technology and the battle space and the time horizons in which force has to be employed. I think these doctrines are going to be continually updated in tune with these parameters.
Atulji, another thing that I'd like to know from you, that when the Director General of Air Operations was speaking, and also you spoke at length about the technology and drones, few things that stand out was that Pakistan, of course, it doesn't have any indigenous technology of her own, whether military or otherwise, and the missiles and the drones that it was using were imported. Some Turkish names were mentioned by the DG Air Operations, whereas the old warhorse like India's Pichora system and Akash systems delivered very well, according to the DG Air Operations. So would you agree, or what would you like to say on India's superior technological skill?
You see, there's on the air defense side, when we have proved it. I'm very particularly want to focus on the Turkish drones. You see, there was this sort of a campaign, or at least an impression created, that these drones are very superior. The Bayraktar drones were used extensively in the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and they proved to be decisive in giving Azerbaijan that edge in that particular war. Pakistan started acquiring those. So, there was the psychological warfare element in it, that countries with Turkish drones have an edge over their adversary. I think that particular myth was exploded by, you mentioned the various weapon systems which we had, including the Soviet era Pechora missile or Shilka, which have been upgraded though. So I think that's a very important message which goes out not only on this theater, but military analysts all over the world are going to analyze this. So this Turkish hype over the sort of close to invincibility or the potency of their drones, that has taken a big hit by this skirmishes which we've had with Pakistan. I think there's another point. You look at the way we could manage, you mentioned yourself about that 11 or 12 air bases which could strike deep inside the territory. What about the Pakistani air defense system? Most of it is based on the Chinese HQ-9 and related batteries, air defense batteries which they have. I think that also has taken a big beating about the quality of some of these Chinese weapon systems, air defense weapon system. I'm not talking about the aircraft or anything else.
This brings me to ask
systems,
you. I just wanted to ask you about this very important thing, that 11 air bases of Pakistan were hit. So do you think that the entire air defense system or the air security structure apparatus that Pakistan has, that has taken a rather hard hit?
Absolutely. I mean, we don't have to say anything about it. It's there for us to see. I mean, you look at it, Noor Khan Air Base, next to VIP security, VIP section, where the
Rawalpindi GHQ
elite of the Pakistan, usually gathers. You are going and hitting that, which would be absolutely, the most securely guarded kind of a base. You manage Sargodha, where you have stored some of these nuclear capable missiles. So, you can hit with impunity. And that itself, you don't have to say anything. As Sachin Tendulkar say, let my bat do the talking. We have done that.
Yes.
There's nothing more to say about the quality of the Pakistani air defense system and its composition.
And now let's listen to what the DGMO, Lieutenant General Rajiv Ghai, said about the Pakistani drones in the press briefing held a short while ago.
अगर आप सारे सिस्टम्स को पार कर भी गए तो आपको फिर भी एयरफील्ड या लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशन या जो भी चीज को आप टारगेट कर रहे हैं उसमें पहुंचने से पहले कोई ना कोई इस लेयर्ड ग्रिड का सिस्टम जरूर गिरा देगा। जो दुर्दशा कल आपने पाकिस्तान एयरफील्ड्स की देखी, हमारी एयरफील्ड्स हर प्रकार से ऑपरेशनल हैं। यही नहीं, पाकिस्तान के ड्रोन्स और वेपनाइज्ड यूएवीज से की गई हमलावर कोशिशें भी इस ग्रिड के कारण नाकाम हुई और जो बचे कुचे ड्रोन्स थे उन्हें हमारे शोल्डर फायर्ड हथियारों से मार गिराया गया।
उमेश जी, आपसे इस बारे में जानना चाहेंगे।
मैं एक चीज इस पे जब से प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस सुन रहा हूं तो मेरे दिमाग में चल रही है एक बात। आप देखिए कि जो प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस हो रही है उसमें जब भी कोई टेक्निकल चीज़ें तो बहुत कुछ होती हैं लड़ाई में और हैं, उनकी जानकारी दी जा रही है, लेकिन जब भी कोई ऐसी बात जिसमें पाकिस्तानी एयरबेस की दुर्दशा की बात हो या चाहे उसके ड्रोन को मार गिराने की बात हो, चाहे उसके मिसाइल सिस्टम पर अटैक करने की बात हो, उसको नष्ट करने, हर बात को जानबूझ करके मुझे ऐसा लगता है हिंदी में बोला जा रहा है और कहीं ना कहीं ये जनता को एक संदेश देने की कोशिश हो रही है। जो नैरेटिव की लड़ाई हो रही है, मैं बार बार इसको दोहराऊंगा कि नैरेटिव की लड़ाई हो रही है, उसमें बार बार कुछ और पक्ष दिखाने की कोशिश हो रही है। तो ये टेक्निकलिटी तो अपनी जगह पर युद्ध की है, लेकिन ये बताने की कोशिश हो रही है और मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि पाकिस्तान को भी संदेश देने की कोशिश है, पाकिस्तानी जनता को भी संदेश देने की कोशिश है कि हमने, जो बार बार आप भी कह रहे हैं कौशिक जी, कि 11 एयरबेस को तबाह किया और नूर खान जो चकनाला जो बिल्कुल उनके आर्मी हेडक्वार्टर रावलपिंडी के बगल में है उसको तबाह किया, उसको इसके साथ ही जो जो रहीम खान उनका एक बड़ा एयरबेस है उसको तबाह किया, पाकिस्तान की S-400 मिसाइल को मार गिराया जो चीन निर्मित है। तो एक तरह से एक संदेश देने की कोशिश है कि भारत अब पहले वाला भारत नहीं है। और एक चीज और भी है कि बार बार जो आप देखेंगे कि आतंक की बात हम लोग पहले ही दिन से कर रहे हैं। 6-7 मई की रात को जो 9 ठिकानों पर कार्रवाई की गई, मैं उसको हमला नहीं कह करके कार्रवाई कहता हूं, तो कार्रवाई को बार बार ये बताने की कोशिश हुई है कि हम आतंक के खिलाफ कार्रवाई कर रहे थे। और आज भी बार बार
नहीं, ये तो स्टेटेड पोजीशन ही है, हम किसी देश के विरुद्ध नहीं है, किसी पे कोई ये आक्रमण है तो वो है
लेकिन जो
आतंकवाद पे और आतंकवादियों पर।
जी, पाकिस्तान जो दुनिया के सामने पोस्चर करने की कोशिश कर रहा है कि हम पर हमला हुआ है, और जो जिस तरह से सीज फायर के बाद कुछ स्थितियां बदली हैं, मुझे लग रहा है कि इन सब स्थितियों को जवाब देने की अपने ढंग से, और अभी हमारे भारतीय सेना के अफसरों के जरिए, भारतीय सेना के एक तरह से निर्णायक अफसरों के जरिए ये संदेश देने की कोशिश हो रही है कि अब जो है वो विनय वाली बात तब तक थी जब तक कि पहलगाम का जो कहा ना कि पाप का घड़ा पहलगाम में भर गया था, तो पहलगाम ने पाप का घड़ा भर दिया है, पहलगाम की घटना ने। उसके बाद अब भारत चुप नहीं बैठेगा। तो मुझे लगता है कि कई संदेश इसमें है। एक तो ये है कि जो टर्की का जो ड्रोन सिस्टम है, जिसको माना जाता था कि बड़ा अचूक किस्म का है, उसको हमने मार गिराया। और वो भी जैसा कि आपने अभी बातचीत में भी कहा था, वो भी अपने आकाश सिस्टम से जो बिल्कुल स्वदेशी है। तो ये भी है कि दुनिया को संदेश है कि भारत अपने भी हथियारों के दम पर दुनिया के साथ जूझ सकता है। जो भी उसके सुरक्षा में घात लगाने की कोशिश करेगा, वो जो टर्की का जो ड्रोन सिस्टम है, उस ड्रोन सिस्टम की जो अजेयता स्थापित थी, उस अजेयता को भी एक तरह से चैलेंज किया है। और चीन का जो मिसाइल सिस्टम है, जो उसको भी लेकर के खास तौर पर पिछले 2-3 दिनों से बातें चल रही हैं, उसका भी जवाब आज भारतीय सेना ने साफ तौर पर स्पष्ट रूप से दिया है।
उमेश जी, एक चीज मैं आपसे जानना चाहूंगा। देखिए, भारत 15 अगस्त 1947 को हमें आजादी मिली, और उससे एक दिन पहले पाकिस्तान मतलब कि अपनी एग्जिस्टेंस में आई, ठीक है ना। हमने अपने लिए एक दिशा निर्देश तैयार किया और कहां से कहां पहुंचे। अगर आप पिछले 10, 11, 12 सालों में देखेंगे तो चाहे वो साइंस हो, टेक्नोलॉजी हो, अर्थव्यवस्था हो, कोविड हो, हमने हर तरह की चीजों में हमने कामयाबी हासिल की। और वही पाकिस्तान आज मतलब अपने लिए, अपने बचाव के लिए भी कुछ नहीं बना सकता। ऐसी स्थिति क्यों?
देखिए, पाकिस्तान की जो पहली स्थिति, इस पर एक चीज़ मैं बोलना चाहूँगा, मुझे अभी याद आ गया, तो मुझे लगता है कि आज इसकी जानकारी और इस देना ज़रूरी है, इसका जिक्र करना ज़रूरी है। पाकिस्तान जब बन रहा था तो उसको ऐसे पोस्चर किया गया कि वो दुनिया का स्वर्ग बनेगा। और मुझे याद आता है सरदार पटेल का एक व्याख्यान जो उन्होंने कलकत्ता के ब्रिगेड परेड मैदान में, जिसको अब हम विक्टोरिया मेमोरियल पार्क के बगल में जानते हैं, उसमें उन्होंने एक भाषण दिया था। तो उस भाषण में किसी ने जिक्र कर दिया कि पाकिस्तान अपने को स्वर्ग बता रहा है, वो स्वर्ग बनाने की कोशिश कर रहा है। तो उन्होंने उस पर टिप्पणी करते हुए कहा था कि अरे उनको स्वर्ग बनाने दो, स्वर्ग बनाएंगे तो थोड़ी, वो तंज में कहा था कि थोड़ी ठंडी हवा इधर भी आएगी। मुझे लगता है कि वो तंज जो था, हमारे भारतीय नेताओं ने समझा था पाकिस्तान की जो बुनियाद थी ना, वो बुनियाद ही गड़बड़ थी, वो दिशाहीन रहा। और एक चीज़ और भी है कि वहाँ आप देखेंगे कि हमारे यहाँ, जिसको चर्चिल ने कहा था कि ये अपने को साबित नहीं कर पाएंगे और ये खुद नष्ट हो जाएंगे, आज़ाद होंगे, तो भारत के लिए कहा था। उस समय ब्रिटेन के प्रधानमंत्री रह चुके थे, हालांकि उस समय चुनाव हार चुके थे। लेकिन हमारे यहाँ लोकतंत्र पहले दिन से स्थापित हुआ। हमारे यहाँ जो डिप्राइव सेक्शन था उसको भी उतना ही वोटिंग का अधिकार मिला, उसके वोट की भी कीमत वही रही जो हमारे यहाँ प्रिविलेज क्लास था। पाकिस्तान में ऐसा नहीं हुआ, वहाँ लोकतंत्र जड़ नहीं जमा पाया। और मैं ये कहता हूँ कि पाकिस्तान की सेना में सरकार है या सरकार में सेना घुसी हुई है, ये थोड़ी चीज़ें हैं। तो इसलिए चीज़ें बड़ी गड़बड़ हो गई, उसकी दिशा तय नहीं हुई। और इसकी वजह से पाकिस्तान आप देखेंगे कि कई चीज़ों पर, जैसे अभी कोई भी समझदार देश होता तो इस तरह से, खासतौर पर पड़ोसी देश के साथ जिस तरह से उसने कार्रवाई किया या एक्शन लिया है या जो भी हमला किया है वो नहीं करता, लेकिन उसने बार बार किया है। तो उसकी बुनियाद ही गड़बड़ गड़बड़ रही, झूठ की बुनियाद रही, झूठे सपनों की बुनियाद रही, तो इसलिए उसका असर बिल्कुल दिखता है, आज भी दिख रहा है.
And now let's listen in to the Director General Military Operations, Lieutenant General Rajiv Ghai, on his take on India's prowess at the briefing during Operation Sindoor held a short while ago.
आपने देखा कि जब जब पाकिस्तान एयरफोर्स ने हमारे एयरफील्ड्स और लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशंस में 9 और 10 मई की रात को लगातार हमले किए, वो इस मजबूत एयर डिफेंस ग्रिड के सामने विफल हो गए. आपके सामने इस ग्रिड को एक तरीके से दर्शाया गया है. आप देख रहे हैं कि इंटरनेशनल बाउंड्री से कितनी लेयर्स, रडार्स, काउंटर अनमैन्ड एरियल सिस्टम्स, उसके पीछे शोल्डर फायर्ड वेपन्स, हमारे विंटेज एयर डिफेंस वेपन्स और लास्ट में हमारे मॉडर्न एयर डिफेंस वेपन सिस्टम्स. तो कोई मौका नहीं था कि पाकिस्तान एयरफोर्स ये मल्टी टीयर डिफेंस को पार करके पीछे हमारी एयरफील्ड्स या लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशंस को टारगेट कर पाए.
And we have with us Major General Ashok Kumar with us now. And thank you for joining us, Major General Kumar. And how do you assess the DGMO's take on India's superior air prowess?
There was absolute truth right from the beginning when the Indian air defense system involving Army Air Defense as well as the Air Force Air Defense resources thwarted those 500 drones which came during night 7th and 8th. Not only that, in the subsequent assault and attempt by the Pakistani Air Force and their armed forces, all kind of aerial intrusions have been negated. So today's press conference, initially it was planned as a follow-up of the DGMO's level talk, which was scheduled at 12 o'clock, which has got now postponed to the evening timing. Gave much more clarity in the clear terms to the Indian public and Indian masses. It was predominantly focused on the air defense resources as to how we have had the impregnable Army air defense in terms of getting the surveillance inputs, having the tiered defenses of guns, missile systems, gun missile systems, the aerial resources, and how we have been able to negate all that kind of effort which was made by the Pakistan armed forces. And also he highlighted that as to how we are prepared for any future actions should Pakistan attempt to do these things. The high point was the statement which he had taken out from Ramcharit Manas saying that Binu bhai hoy ne preet. And rightly so, there is another famous saying in Sanskrit which says Vinash Kale Vipreet Buddhi. So it remains unquestionably proven that Pakistan has moved on the path of self-destruction. It was banking on its own air defense resources as well as those which it had got from China over a period of time. But now he has got the test of reality from the Indian armed forces and hope that he takes the right lessons and does not repeat these things in future.
And what would you say about this joint operations? Because we saw the prowess of Indian Air Force, Indian Navy also. They mentioned, they maintained the maritime dominance also, and all the sea lanes were kept open for, maritime traffic. And also our naval ops maintained a sea hawk-like eye on the Pakistani coast and also the international waters.
Absolutely. Though our entire operations were focused only on the terrorists and their infrastructure, including the people who were propagating that from Pakistani soil. But after 1971 war, this was the first time where all the three services have fought this kind of actions in last 4 days in an integrated manner. The air defense resources of Army Air Defense controlled by their project Akash Tir, and those Army Air Force resources which are controlled by ISCCS, and the naval resources which are controlled by their system of Tribune. All these were integrated, and on land, air and sea, entire surveillance system was active, even including the use of more than 10 satellites. And therefore, we were on the higher side of the information gathering, as well also better shooter to sensor link, and we were able to shoot down all kind of incoming drones very effectively. Can you imagine when the 500 plus drones and swarms and a multitude of such resources attempt to a country on this entire western border, right from Jammu and Kashmir to Punjab to Rajasthan and to Gujarat. So the entire air defense system was effective, and this is the biggest high point of the Indian armed forces today. If you recall the attack of Hamas and what happened to Israel on 7th October 23, even a country like Israel was not able to negate all the kind of aerial attacks, at least on the first go. Some of the people were able to enter and create damage in Israel. But as against that, what has been demonstrated by the Indian Armed Forces, it has been a zero entry of the Pakistan aerial-based resources, which had any capacity to damage our resources. And therefore, this brings out not only our capability on the world stage, but also it puts us on a different and higher orbital in front of the world.
Thank you, Major General Kumar, for joining us on Akashvani.
Atul, I'd like to bring in you here. And one of the factors that we all noticed during the current 3-day this battle or military action that we saw was a new kind of warfare on the information front. We are all aware information warfare became very pronounced. We had all kinds. So do you see this, which is also an extended form of battle that the military has to engage in?
Absolutely, Prasad. I think this is very important, that information war is a very important element in modern warfare. And we have to be on top of our game in this. And, Pakistan has mastered the art of propaganda. Let's give the devil his due. And you have seen how fake news were being peddled, old images were being brought together as if these were the actual happenings which were happening on this quote unquote on the battlefield. So that we had our own fact checkers here. We fought that war well, information war. And hats off to the people who were behind it. But I think this is one area we need to focus in much more depth right now. The social media domain is something where we have to dominate. And that would require altogether different kind of effort, not just resources. But when you are on Twitter, you need influencers, and you need these influencers who have large following. You need to build this network of influencers all across the world. And this happens 24/7 because people in different time zones are operating at different times. So I think this got highlighted very sharply during the engagement or this conflict which we've had in the last few days. I think we need to devote more resources to it. And I think it's here. Now it's not it's a whole. It's not just a whole of government approach in any kind of in a fight. It's Team India which has to fight, which means drawing in our young people into it, our tech-savvy youth, and that is an advantage we have. But bring them into a system where they are familiar with the kind of information war attacks which come. There's a pattern to it. There are platforms which are used. We have to study that. And how do we counter it and are ahead of the game? I think that is one thing, Prasad, we need to really work on, because, I was shocked to see, in fact, amused as well, when Pakistanis in London and elsewhere were celebrating as if they won the war. I mean, it's just optics, and it's false. It's completely creating a false narrative and an impression. It's just tissue of lies. But then you got to fight them out in this very domain, and you have to win this battle of the information war battle. A lot of information and data will come from the armed forces because they have the facts. But to orchestrate that, we need quick, efficient teams to set our narrative into it. I think we need to work on it.
Thank you, Atul, Aneja ji, for joining us. And Prasad ji, as we were discussing also, this is your domain. You've been with information, and by information, I mean as a journalist. So how do we utilize today's social media to spread across this message? Because by messaging, you and I and Umesh ji, of course, we know that what has been, dished out or doled out to the Pakistanis by their own establishment, and the establishment also is known to have been, the army, the Pakistan army has the last word on even on media activities. And just a couple of weeks or days ago, we saw how when Indians were protesting outside the Pakistan High Commission, and how the Pakistan High Commission officials threatened the protesters there. So how do we take on this information war to the next level?
Well, I think part of it, the same question which directed to Atul came out of that too. The fact is, you have to realize that you have to be occupying all space available. And when I say space available, in the information domain available, and social media, as you all know, is now a universal, it is ubiquitous, it's present everywhere,
yes.
And anybody can access it from anywhere, any corner of the world. So you need to have a comprehensive understanding of the domain. Just as you heard the term military from the military operators, whether it is naval operators, maritime domain awareness, military
Yes.
domain awareness. So you have to know what is the domain that we have to operate upon. It's a cyberspace. Anybody is there. And so you have to work your strategy. By the way, this information warfare courses are being run in some of the establishments. It's just that, as Atul said, we need to have people who are ready to work on it and come quickly. But information should also be accurate. Information should be one, what we are putting out, people have the trust. And we are also countering the propaganda. That's where you win the battle of the mind.
Right. Here, another thing that I'd like to mention to our listeners is that, where you also mentioned cyber attacks, and so did Atul, Aneja. India has also been a victim of various cyber attacks, and especially emanating from our western borders. And India has been able to repel that. So India's prowess, we have know very well in high tech and science and technology, and now our supremacy in saving our assets, all military installations are safe. That also is there. And you mentioned about information technology, and India is known to be a superpower where software is concerned. I'm sure that the Indian youth, especially who are working in high tech and science and technology and these fields, they will have to, take it to the next level, so that misinformation or disinformation that is run against India can be countered, and countered very, very positively.
Yeah, I think that's exactly put it. And remember, Kaushik ji, way back we used to talk of Star Wars. Probably we saw a witness of the Star Wars in one way. But now is also the time for cyber wars.
Yes.
People are preparing, countries are preparing for what is going to be the next cyberspace attacks. You mentioned cyber attacks. Basically, it could be, they are just as you war game real battle theaters. People are war gaming what's happening on the cyberspace.
Right. And to cite you an example, there was a power outage, and Spain, Portugal and another country didn't have power for so many years, and no one knew how that happened. That was a cyber attack.
Yeah. So and in fact, during the Russia-Ukraine conflict, people were looking at this particular aspect as to, can something be, there were reports about a cable being disconnected. So, there are a lot of things that are happening around.
And on that note, I thank you, KV Prasad, senior journalist, and Umesh Chaturvedi, senior journalist, for joining us in the studios of Akashvani today. Namaskar.